Federal solution. This gets solved at a state level. I'm looking at Governor Sununu on the board here. He talks about that a lot. And it ultimately gets down to where the rubber meets the road, and that's where the patient is in need of help or preventing the need for help.
That's President Biden last week saying the solution to fighting COVID-19 resides at the state level, despite his promise to, quote, shut down the virus during the 2020 presidential campaign. This comes as new cases are rapidly surging across the country due to the Omicron variant. New York set a record yesterday for its highest ever single-day total of new cases with over 85,000. Florida is also seeing record high cases. Meanwhile, the Biden administration has promised to deliver 500 million at-home tests soon, despite the administration reportedly rejecting a proposal from testing experts in October to ramp up production before the holidays. The president has denied that report. For more on this, let's bring in New York Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis. She's a member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us on Sunday Morning Futures. Look, the president has been all over the map. He promised to shut it down in July. He said essentially it was shut down. Now he's saying it's really up to the states. He said he had a plan, but I can't tell if the guy has a plan, because if it is, he's holding a really good secret there.
Well, Happy New Year, Jason, and thank you for having me. The reality is that the president made a lot of promises during the campaign trail, but we're not seeing it come to fruition now. In fact, he was so critical of President Trump, yet we've had more deaths in 2021 under President Biden, and he had the benefit of the vaccination, which we know reduces the symptoms that somebody experiences if they test positive. And I could tell you from a state like New York, where we have a one-party rule and we see restrictions and mandates and people being fired, losing their livelihood if they choose not to vaccinate. These restrictions have done nothing to really reduce the level of these positive cases. As you said earlier, we're seeing record positive cases once again. And I believe it's time that this administration focus on therapeutics, focus on treatments. And I've been pushing for that because the reality is that this virus is here to stay. It's various variants, various forms, but we need to learn to live with it. And the best we're going to do by both vaccinating people who want to be vaccinated and making sure they have access to it, but also ensuring that we have the therapeutics and the treatment to treat people, including those positive patients that do end up getting sick, even despite having the vaccination.
Yeah, I kind of like what Congressman Jim Jordan said. He said, if President Biden's plan is working, how come it's not working? It just begs the question. You have people now that are saying the wrong way to track this is by the number of new cases. How convenient for the new president to be able to take on this role. But it also strikes me, Congresswoman, that it is not a very targeted approach to just blanketly send out 500 million tests. Why not target those that are the most vulnerable? Why not target the people that actually are showing symptoms? I just don't understand why that isn't the prevailing thought there in Washington, D.C.
I agree with you, and this administration sadly has been just very reactive. So instead of focusing on the treatments and therapeutics, they want to focus on more mandates. And you're right, if he believes now this should be the responsibility of the states, why is he continuing to try to enforce this mandate on every business across America? 82 million Americans would be affected by it, and many will lose their livelihoods as a result. That is why I and 180 other colleagues of mine in Congress have filed an amicus brief with the Supreme Court, which will be hearing that case, or at least for the stay, on January 7th.
Well, good luck with that. I want to talk about crime, because there is an intersection here, and I know you're keen on crime and being able to fight crime. First of all, we have an open border. It's as porous as it can be. It just flows. People coming across with who knows what, whether it's Omicron or the virus or drugs or whatnot. But then you also have this crime surge that's happening in these Democratic cities, including New York City, which is close to you.
Yeah. One of the first things I did as a member of Congress was visit the southern border to expose what was going on there. And basically, President Biden has allowed the drug cartels to run our southern border. We are seeing record individuals being smuggled over the border, but also we're seeing drugs. Fentanyl, as you know, is now the leading cause of deaths in a new report among 18 to 45-year-olds. So we could talk about COVID, but among that age group, it is fentanyl, and that stuff is pouring over our border. The drug cartels are making billions and billions of dollars a month just doing that. And so we need to secure our border. It is shocking to me that President Biden continues to push the Supreme Court to allow him to repeal once again the Remain in Order. He doesn't want to comply with it, despite the fact that it was effective in keeping people in Mexico until their asylum cases can be heard and they're properly vetted. Now, locally, we have New York City, of course, is sadly a sanctuary city. We continue to protect those who are here illegally committing crimes. In fact, someone who was arrested, a Mexican national who was committing drug trafficking, allegedly fentanyl, here in New York City, was released by a judge back onto the streets. So we need our mayor to appoint good judges to the bench, number one. But we also need to ensure that he fights for changes to the disastrous bail reform in Albany that has led to individuals constantly being put back on the streets despite having dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen prior arrests and convictions. Unfortunately, in New York City in 2021, we saw nearly 500 murders, which is the most we've seen in a decade here in New York City. And categories of crime, everything from shootings to rape to robbery to car thefts, have all skyrocketed. And in fact, it'd be interesting to know that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's home borough of the Bronx is where a third of the shootings took place in New York City, and she is one of the leading advocates of the defund the police movement.
Yeah, this idea of the bail reform, getting these people back out on the street as quickly as possible, I think is not the right way to solve this. And you have to have prosecutors that are actually going to prosecute these crimes. In Los Angeles with District Attorney Gascon, you've seen it as rampant as can possibly be, and the solution ends up just being just absolutely horrendous in terms of its consequences. I want to turn now. Let's listen to Governor Abbott. He was interviewed by Maria Bartiromo, and I want you to listen to this and give me your reaction to it.
The cartels are advertising on TikTok to get drivers to assist in them moving illegal immigrants around the state of Texas. It's an issue that the Texas Department of Public Safety is working to crack down upon, but it shows the extent to which Texas law enforcement officers have to step up and deal with the challenges that are created by the Biden administration importing illegal activity into our country and into our state.
Now, we only have a short amount of time here, but I think you've been talking about this, the crime, COVID, fentanyl, open borders, they all kind of mesh together, but you're left with states like Texas, where Governor Abbott has got his hands full, and the administration is not doing its job. What can you do in Congress to get the administration to actually enforce the laws that are currently on the books?
Well, as you know, those states have taken their fight to court, which is the right thing to do, and that is why the Biden administration has been forced to reinstate the Remain in Mexico. The sad thing is that now they're even fighting to try to get the Supreme Court to revisit it again so they can no longer enforce the Remain in Mexico policy that was clear and was working. The reality is, and this is what I asked on the floor to my colleagues and the President of the United States, whose side are you on? Are you on the side of the drug cartels, or are you on the side of the American people? When you see those numbers out of 18 to 45-year-olds, the leading cause of death is fentanyl, and you know it's streaming over our border, you have a responsibility to do something. And the fact that they go out of their way to continue to allow this illegal migration, which, by the way, this year will total more than the population of the President's home state of Delaware and the Vice President's home city of San Francisco combined. So we have legislation that would permanently put Remain in Mexico into law, but we need to take back the House in order to do it, because Nancy Pelosi will never allow it to the floor under this Congress.
Yeah, there are 23 retiring Democrats on slate here, and Republicans better come up with a way to not just be the party of no, but just and say, hey, this is our agenda. This is what we would do. This, if you put us in charge, is what we will actually do. Because all of these retirements, these wave of retirements creates a great opportunity. And Republicans, we're going to have you back on, talk more about their agenda, what they can do. But for now, let's just say Happy New Year, and thank you, Congresswoman Malliotakis. Thank you for joining us here on Sunday Morning Futures.
Happy New Year. Thank you.
All right, COVID-19